Our next story is Jorinda and Joringel. Once upon a time there was an ancient castle in the middle of a deep forest where an old woman lived all by herself. She was a powerful witch. Every day she turned herself into a cat or an owl, and every evening she turned herself back into a human form. She knew how to capture birds and other game, which she would then slaughter, then roast and eat. If any man came within 100 steps of the castle, she would cast a spell over him, making him unable to move until she freed him. If an innocent girl came that close, however, the woman would change her into a bird and force her into a wicker basket. She would then carry the basket up to a room in the castle where she kept more than 7,000 other birds of this kind. Now at that time there was a girl called Jorinda, who people said was the most beautiful girl in the whole kingdom. She was betrothed to a handsome boy called Joringel. It wasn't long before their marriage, and they loved nothing more than to be in each other's company. One afternoon they wanted to be alone, so they went for a walk in the forest. We must be careful not to go too close to the castle," Joringel said. It was a lovely evening, and the sun shone warmly on the tree trunks against the dark green of the deep woods, and the turtle doves cooed mournfully in the old beech trees. From time to time Jorinda wept, though she didn't know why. She sat down in the sunlight and sighed, and Joringel sighed too. They felt as sad as if they were close to death. In the intensity of their emotions, they lost track of where they were and couldn't find their way home. When the sun had not quite set, when it was half below and half above the mountain, Joringel, searching for the right path, parted the leaves of the bush and saw the wall of the castle only a few yards away. It was such a shock that he nearly fainted. And in the same moment he heard Jorinda beginning to sing. "My little bird with a red, red ring, sorrow, 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 sing. My sweet bird with a ring so red, my lovely turtle dove is..." But she couldn't complete the verse. Instead, Joringel heard a nightingale pouring out its song, and he saw to his horror that there was indeed a nightingale perching on a branch where Jorinda had been standing. Not only that, but a night owl with glowing eyes was flying around her. It flew around 3 times, crying, "Doo, doo, doo." And Joringel himself had turned to stone. He couldn't move, he couldn't cry out, he couldn't even blink. It was almost dark by then. The owl flew into a bush and he lost sight of it. But then the leaves rustled and out came a bent old woman, haggard and yellow with blood-red eyes, a crooked nose whose tip almost touched her chin, muttering to herself. She snatched up the nightingale from the branch and carried it away. And Joringel couldn't cry out, couldn't move a muscle. The nightingale was gone. Before long the old woman came back empty-handed. In a cracked old voice she said, "When the moon shines into the basket, Zacchaeus, set him free." At that moment Joringel felt his limbs loosen and he was able to move again. He flung himself to his knees before the old woman and cried, "Oh, please, please, please give back my Jorinda." "Never," said the witch. "You'll never get her back." He pleaded, he cried out loud, he wept, but nothing would change her mind. She didn't stop to listen but left him crying, "Oh, what's going to become of me?" He left the castle and made his way to a village where he wasn't known. There he found work as a shepherd, which kept him there for a long time. He often went back to gaze at the castle, but he never went close. One night he had a strange dream. He dreamed that he had found a beautiful red flower with a pearl nestling in its petals. In the dream he plucked the flower and took it to the castle, where he could open every door and every wicker bird cage just by touching it with the flower, and he managed to free his Jorinda. When he woke up the next morning, he set off at once to find the flower from his dream. He searched for 8 days, and on the 9th day he found a flower as red as blood, with a dewdrop amongst its petals, as big as the finest pearl. He plucked the flower with the greatest care and set off for the castle. As he passed within the magic circle, he felt nothing stopping him. He was able to move without hindrance as far as the gate. Encouraged by that, Joringel touched the flower to the gate, which immediately sprang open. He went in and stood in the dismal courtyard, listening for the sound of the birds. It wasn't hard to hear. He followed the sound of their singing and soon found himself in the great room where they were all kept in their 7,000 baskets. The witch was feeding them at the moment, and when Joringel came in, she stopped and turned to him, spitting and screaming with anger. Her curses were appalling, and she spat gore and venom from her wrinkled lips, but nothing touched him, and she couldn't get close enough to scratch him with her claw-like nails. He took no notice and went on freeing the birds one after the other, wondering how in the world he would find his Jorinda among so many. But then he noticed the old woman had taken one basket down and was making for the door. He leapt across the room and touched the basket with the flower, and it flew open. He touched the witch with the flower as well, and all her powers fell away. And there was Jorinda, as beautiful as ever. She threw her arms around his neck and hugged him tight. He released all the other birds, and then Joringel and Jorinda went home, where they were soon married and lived happily ever after. The end.